Hola Barcelona. Gracias por la oportunidad de hablar con usted esta noche. I am very excited to have the opportunity to show the Zemer surgery, and we're going to get started right now. The patient's been anxiously waiting. So let me walk you right through how we are able to achieve these outstanding flaps with the LDV. The patient's been measured here. We're going to give you our flap thicknesses. I'm going to be using the 110 spacer in the head. And this is our 250 micron depth head we're going to be using on the eye today. So we're going to use this spacer, which brings the glass plate away from the eye to reach the 110 micron zone. All right, so let's get started. We're going to use just a little bit of a viscoelastic on the eye to allow for the laser energy to pass off the eye as it naturally would in a blade. And we're going to have about a 140 degree angle off the edge of the eye, which is thought to be ideal by Dr. Marshall. The head is ergometric, allows us to slide over the eye. But the primary reason for this is that we're going to have the last focal distance from the eye be about 2 millimeters over the eye. So this is going to allow us to get an extremely tightly focused and very small spot down under the cornea, much better than the 10 centimeter zone, which is required of the intralays. So if you just look up here towards that red flashing light, and I'm going to come over your eye with a little window, and I want you to look through that window up towards that red flashing light. You're doing great. And perfect. And vacuum. We're attaching onto the eye with a microprocessor controlled vacuum.
Check.
And we're good to go. You center the eye using a little bit of a circle here in the middle. And it takes about 30 seconds currently at our current pass speed. There's a prism flying back and forth across the eye, and the laser energy is being delivered under the last focal point, which is about 2 millimeters over the eye. And this is what allows us to use this extremely low energy at extremely fast pulse rates to allow us to achieve a total ablation. So there are no tissue bridges or minimal tissue bridges, only between the transition zones. The up and down motion is what we call the slow phase, and there's a very fast phase going back and forth across the eye where the rapid pulsing is occurring. When we look down at the eye at this point, what we look for is to see that we have an even field of bubbles. It looks good. And we see a nice circle around the edge, which is, again, that pearl of dots around the edge tells us that the laser came out of the eye right at that zone. And that's with a little bit of gas that is released from the eye at the edge of the eye. We're going to go ahead and measure. You want to stare up here towards the red if you can. Looking good. And we'll bring it down here. Perfect. Typically we get about, we're shooting for a 9 millimeter flap here, and we're coming in at around 9.25. The hinge coming in around 4 millimeters. These flaps have a interesting quality to them in that there are these transition points which occur vertically. And so what I do is I start the flap at the edge of the hinge here. Let me just clear that fluid. A big point for me is to avoid getting water up on the treatment surface. It's my strong belief that water is our biggest enemy in these treatments, and it does create a randomness to the ablation rate. So what we can typically do is simply glide these flaps easily back. And if we reach any points here where we have any tightness, we simply free them up and turn the flap back. We're looking good. Fantastic. And again, I'm being fastidious about keeping water off the treatment surface. So we have a 111 micron flap by subtraction pachymetry. Again, I want you to note this very glassy treatment surface. This is because we've had photo disruption across this entire surface here, and that's going to allow us to get a better uptake with the excimer. And again, the rubber meets the road where the excimer is turned on, and we get the opportunity to to apply the treatment onto the eye. And we want every micron of treatment here. And really, the point of these excimer surgeries is that the engineers of Technolaus did a very nice job of designing a micronally accurate device. Keep watching that red flashing light. You're doing great. That smell is just the dust coming off your eye. You're doing beautifully. Perfect. Excellent. Stay right with it. We're doing a mixed astigmatism case here. In the United States, we're obliged to treat the minus, which we just did. So I just treated his cylinder, and then we're going to come back and treat his hyperopia. Again, the German engineers in Munich require that we do a mock fluence. So we're going to go ahead and do a mock fluence. No? Okay. Between eyes, we can do mock fluence. Okay, great. Looking good. Just stay right with that red flashing light. You're doing perfectly. There's been discussion about the transition zones which occur between the fast and the slow phase. And I'll discuss that with you just momentarily here. Just keep staring right at the red. You're doing perfectly. Beautiful. Again, the Technolaus allows you to move the centration. We're just doing a very light hyperopic correction here. Perfect. Stay right with it. You're doing great. Perfect. I'm just going to smooth your flap back now, so just kind of stay right up there towards the red. I want you again to note that glassiness. These very difficult to see maybe from the video, but they're very light little transition moments here between the up and down pathways. These are actually probably single lamellar layers that are pulled up between the transition moments. And this would mean that they're probably in about the 0.25 micron zone in terms of their height. Therefore, they're completely optically neutral. They don't cause any optical effect at all. Meanwhile, the major issues that we have in terms of ablation quality are solved by this laser. Because of the low energy, we're able to apply 100% treatment. So we're not leaving gaps between the photoablated areas. And again, I'm keen on pointing out some issues here. One big one is that we don't have a gap at the edge of these flaps as we do with interlace. So we're not ablating away a large gap here at the edge. So if we had pannus or some sort of heme here, which with interlace would follow its way around the eye, here we're not going to have that because, again, it's completely edged in here. Very nice. The next day, you can't even see the edge of these flaps. If you did need to retreat, you'd simply press down on the eye, and that edge will present itself, and you can easily see it. By habit, with interlace, where I was always fighting inflammation, we're using a little bit of steroid on the eye right after the treatment. We don't see DLK. We don't see transient light sensitivity syndrome. And we also have not seen epithelial ingrowth with these flaps, as was suggested early on by the detractors of this device. We have not seen any of that. In fact, once we've really got these flaps lifting with forceps like this, we really find that we're getting very smooth epithelial edges, no disruption of the epithelium. I'm just moving right along. I want to stare up towards that red light again and chin up for me just a little bit. Perfect. Okay. We'll go ahead and measure again. Perfect. Again, we're going to use a little hyaluronase-based viscoelastic. In Europe, you're able to use LaserVisc. In the United States, we don't have LaserVisc, so we use an Oasis product that has hyaluronase in it. Very low percentage, 0.15. You want to just keep staring right at the red light. You're doing great. And once again, you're looking through this window. I'm going to bring the mag down on the eye so we can see a little better down there. Look down towards that red light. Do you see him there? Perfect. You stare right through the window. You're doing great. Perfect. Beautiful. Excellent. Vacuum. I'm going to angle just a little bit so his natural tendency to look up is caught. And again, we're nicely centered. Let's go. These are fairly large flaps, so we can tolerate small amounts of decentration very easily. These flaps tend towards 10 millimeters if you'd like. And I think in your learning curve for using the device, you can start with slightly larger rings. So if you're slightly decentered, you're still getting easily your 4 millimeter zone required. With interlace, we generally went for smaller flaps, under 9 millimeters. And with this device, we tend to have flaps that are bigger, and therefore we're sort of forgiven for slight decentrations. They're not common with this device, and actually the learning curve for finding centration is not difficult at all. Once again, we stop for a moment. We just study the treatment surface to see that we have a nice even pattern of bubbles centrally, and then this little pearly ring of bubbles towards the edge. And looking nice. Just going to measure this flap here. We're looking at approximately 9.5 and hinge 4 millimeters. And we're going to do a mock fluence real quick. Yes?
You did it.
Done? Good. Okay, you want to stare at the red light again. Once again, you're looking great. And once again, what I start doing is I start moving towards the edge here, and then I simply turn the flap back and typically roll it over like a taco here. If ever I reach a tag point, the tag points will occur along these transition points, which, as I pointed out, are probably in the 0.25 micron range in terms of height. Remember that optical effects on the eye probably do not occur until we reach probably 3 microns. So at 0.25 microns or less, there's no optical significance to these particular little spots here. I like to turn the lights down occasionally on the Bausch & Lomb just to allow me to get my centration. And then I'll come back up. And again, note that glassy smooth surface. And as you watch this ablation occur, it's possible to see that these little micronal transitions dissipate, especially centrally. Again, we're doing a bitoric here, so we're going to be treating the astigmatism. And then we're going to go back to treating his hyperopia. Again, this is the privilege we have of working with the FDA in the United States, that we don't have some of these things approved for doing mixed astigmatism yet. We're quite excited with the new ownership of Bausch & Lomb that we may have some of these approved for us soon. Okay, it's going great. This is the first phase of your treatment where we're treating the astigmatism. Perfect. And then we're going to change phases here and move over to doing the hyperopic part of the ablation. I don't know how many Bausch & Lomb users we have in the audience here, but this is a laser that treats with very large treatment zones, and we are extremely excited with our refractive results from this device. We've seen better than 20/20 visions in almost 40% of our patients when we randomized to one eye. And our 20/20 rate since August, on data we just reported in Hawaii, was 96.5%. We only had 5 patients in the entire group that fell out of 20/20, and of that group, the explanation was there for each one of them. In one case, patient had a little bit of epithelial disruption. Once again, stare up towards the red light if you can. Perfect. Almost done. These flaps smooth back very nicely. They tend to fall right back into place. And again, we don't have this, this issue as we did with the interlace with a gap. Look down here towards the red. So if he did have some pannus, which he does not, we wouldn't have heme tracking around the eye. As you know, heme is attractive to immunologic aggravation. It irritates the eye is irritated by the heme, and this will lead to DLK with a high frequency. And some of our severe interstitial keratitis with that device, I think, was in cases where we had pannus with the interlace. And again, we don't see any of this with this device. So again, extremely low energies. Remember, these are nanojoule energies that are sort of stacked like poker chips on top of one another. And with our current paradigm, we're seeing, extremely great results from that. Just a little bit of trapped mucus here. Get that? I like using a light pipe. This is one of my things we picked up from a long time ago. It's a great way to get a kind of cross illumination across the cornea to just detect little details, placement of the flap. It's a very nice tool to use intraoperatively. So now we've double hydrated. So we're going to be careful to make sure this flap goes exactly back into place. Very easy to get to placement here, though. And I don't know if you can just see this from the video. Again, I don't know what your quality is, but suffice it to say that I have extremely good view of this flap being just perfectly back into place, which is exactly what we want to see. And again, with our current energy status and the development of the laser as we stand right now, we are looking at flaps that live just that well, day in, day out down here. This laser is hardy. We can move this laser. We can actually cause this laser to roll out of this room and come back if we wanted to. We could move it to another laser that was in another room. We could move it down to an operating room. If you have the opportunity to see some of my video up on the YouTube, we can show how we can use this laser to do lamellar dissections. If we had any issue with this flap, I could easily recut. And in fact, I can not only recut, but I can recut right on top of the old flap because there's no gaseous pressure in the interface. We have no problem with adding one layer right onto the next layer. And I'll demonstrate this for you on the YouTube if you have an opportunity to see some of my video on the YouTube. And thank you so much. I appreciate you having the opportunity to join me here in surgery today. And I appreciate you allowing us to operate on you down here all the way to Barcelona. And I'm going to stick around so you can ask questions as necessary about the surgery here. And maybe we can join in the discussion in a moment. All right, so we'll be hanging around. So thank you so much.